one of the things we haven't talked about yet is the employee part of the puzzle. If you've got human beings involved, you can't have a totally infallible, perfectly secure system, can you?
Well, not today.
Or would you say it's possible?
If you're an Elon Musk and you look into the future, I mean, Elon Musk's vision is that we'll all be replaced by machines at some point.
I thought this was a bit of a dystopian future.
Well, yeah, exactly. But then I guess you could argue, well, yeah, what's the impact on society and how much do we care and how far in the future is that? I guess.
And then are you not just agreeing that in order to make your network and everything secure, you have to remove the human element?
Well, I think that's what he's saying.
Yeah.
If we all become...
But that's like saying we'd be able to get our job done if it wasn't for these damn customers.
Isn't part of making an organisation secure is more than just patching or addressing vulnerabilities. It's also around education, awareness.
I think in an ideal world that would be true. All of the evidence points to education not working. I mean, it works a bit, but most often what happens is it's like sheep dip. You get dumped in the tank, and then after a few days, weeks, if you're lucky, months, it's forgotten. We need a more humane set of guardrails that pop up, I think, that say, "Oh, what you're about to do has an element of risk in it. Do you want to proceed, or I mean, and a business can take a view on whether they just block that, which is
Bring back Microsoft Clippy.
do you really want to write a letter?"
Yes.
Those guardrails then creates the dynamic between digital transformation, the ability for an organisation to be agile and move forward, and then constraining that by the cybersecurity. That becomes the balance.
So you need to do it very carefully, for sure.
Yeah.
Mark, your organisation is involved in turning businesses around. Is this something that comes up during that process?
Absolutely. So in the turnaround space, I'm quite often working with organisations that are in a somewhat more distressed state or operating environment where there's quite a long tail of legacy IT infrastructure. So they actually see the opposite, where digital transformation actually can improve security because it has been perhaps neglected for such a long period of time, that when you move into that new world of transformation, you're then starting to understand those risks for sometimes for the first time, or at least getting them surfaced to the right level, and then you are then beginning to address them.
Do you think the more digital savvy generations who might have a few grey hairs than us are in a better position to deal with cybersecurity in the future because they've grown up in a digital space? Do you think that will improve the security of organisations?
It's an interesting dilemma in terms of if it's a question around privacy of data. I think the younger generations are much more open with their data. Whether that's a good thing or not remains to be seen. Personally, my view is it's not a good thing. I think maintaining the security and privacy of our data is something that's been hard fought.
Is there a backlash over it, do you think? I mean, the Facebook, Cambridge Analytica scandal, for example, highlighting.
Well, I think only if those generations perceive that to be a problem and an issue. And at the moment, I think they're quite open with their data, more open than perhaps some of the older generations have been. So there is a sea change going on there.
Yeah.
But,
They certainly feel more qualified to make security decisions. Doesn't necessarily mean that they are.
Duncan?
I think we underestimate the sophistication with which young people are approaching data. They curate it very carefully. So I think it's people of, dare I say, our generation that just put all of our information on Facebook without really thinking about it. But the younger generation, they use first of all, they use a variety of social media for very specific purposes, and use particular technologies in particular groupings to talk about specific things. So they curate their data much more carefully than we think than we would do in our generation.
But you think there's some naivety on their part?
There's naivety, evenly spread throughout society. I think even amongst people that ought to know better. And again, you get back to this fallibility of the human, which I think modern approaches to cybersecurity are trying to not eradicate, but at least minimise. But I think we need to bite the bullet, frankly, in the industry and do a little bit more checking and monitoring of what people are doing. Are they about to expose themselves or their organisation to risk, and to step in at that point, saying you really ought not to do that?
Absolutely.
What can we do about that?
Absolutely. I mean, just putting people in a room and shouting PowerPoints at them for an hour. proven it doesn't work.
I think that's happening today in Watford, isn't it?
I think so. Well, someone's shouting bigly. But the thing with education is that it's got to be done in a way that creates a visceral response in people. So, for instance,
Shock and awe? What?
No, absolutely not. But I think if I was talking to an ex-policewoman the other day, and she was talking about some riot control training that she did. None of it was classroom-based. It was, or very little of it. Most of it was basically being in the kit and having a shield and a baton and having bricks and firebombs thrown at her, and learning how to deal with it and become accustomed to it. That's because that's creating an actual physiological change in her body and her brain around, what she can do and how she can respond and what she should be doing, etc. Now, not suggesting we do that per se, but what we do need to do is create visceral responses in people. We need to evoke memories, we need to evoke, humour, laughter, etc. Shock and awe works once, and then the effectiveness of it decreases over time. So, it's.
How can we? Do you agree? We need this kind of visceral response.
Yeah,
How can we produce
Well,
that?
I think what you're trying to do is to program or reprogram people to do the right thing and less of the bad thing. I mean, rather than the visceral response, I think I would prefer the term muscle memory. But I know what you're getting at, Tom. But for example, younger drivers are encouraged to have these black boxes in their cars when they're driving, and
So they save some money on their insurance.
For sure, the motivation for them is saving money, but the outcome is that they actually learn better driving practices. Not to drive so fast, not to corner so fast, not to brake so suddenly, which is actually educating them and reinforcing these good behaviours, which we hope will persist beyond them having cheap insurance. So that's the kind of thing that we need to introduce in cybersecurity. We need to introduce this kind of black box system that is looking and encouraging positive behaviours.
But when you see those advertised by the insurance companies, what they're doing is they tell a story. They tell a story about Jake, 23, gets in his car, etc., etc. That's what we need to be doing with our awareness, etc. Is telling stories. Stories are as old as we are.
Yes.
As old as humanity. Stories are what actually connect people together. What we don't do is talk about, people in their daily lives and how they can respond, etc. We just say, don't do this, do this, never do that.
It's part of the problem that the stories don't talk enough about the dark side. The best stories, fairy tales, are quite upfront about the dark side.
It's like
What
school.
goes wrong?
You're going to do far better in a class where you're interested in the topic, or you can relate to the topic, than something that you don't. So if the story is something that's relatable to you, this could happen to me, as opposed to this could happen to my company's data. My credit card details could be stolen. I could lose money. My house could get broken into. You pay attention. And by educating the individual about security within their own lives, then you hope and pray, and most of the time it happens, they then bring that back into the organisation itself. So they start to understand, I'm password protecting my files when I'm sending them at home, or I'm storing them on my storage at home, password protected. I should be doing that at work, surely. And so it starts to build up, and it just becomes part, as you say, muscle memory, or just part of their everyday lives that they're thinking twice about what they're doing. A lot of the time we talk about company data, but of course one of the main things that we've got within the HR department is data about the individual and their next of kin and their financial details and everything else. So if you start talking about that, then they start to twig. When we introduced single sign-on, suddenly a number of people realised that if they shared their passwords with people when they went on holiday, it meant that they could log in and see their pension details. And so they started to think twice. They weren't thinking about the company data, they were thinking about their own data. But we still get the same end result. So, we're happy, they're happy.
Have you seen the idea of a cyber champion working in a British context? I can imagine a few raised eyebrows. Employee of the week. It's a bit.
Well, we have.
People really want to follow a cyber champion.
Well, we have data protection champions where I work, and that seems to work very well. They don't necessarily want to come down to the CISO or to the information security department to talk about certain things or confess their sins. But if they're talking to somebody within their own department, somebody that they work with every day, that they can get that advice from, and then that can filter down. That seems to work a lot better.